Studio once again. How are things, Kyle?
I'm doing really good, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic. We are one day out from the top 100, um, from episode one of our top 100 American wrestlers of all time. Gonna be counting down numbers 100 through 91. Kyle, do you have any guesses who might be on the list?
I have a couple. Boy, if John Smith and Jordan Burroughs don't make the top 100, we got some real issues.
I'm talking 100 through 91.
Oh, you said the list. Okay, so I
Anybody
just
who
wanted to
think?
make sure.
Yeah, it's a not a fair question because um,
I know, I know,
it
but
would be tough to
I
actually
think
guess who's up that high.
that's true.
It'd be
That's
real
very
tough to
true.
guess.
And we talked about this when we spoke briefly. Boy, it's a daunting task, and a few people have asked me about how you went about it in the process, and it took a long time.
Yes, yes. As is, it will appear tomorrow. Really excited for that. Hope folks get a chance to check it out. Um, but let's not waste any more time. I want to get to our guest today. It is Evan Wick. He is now at Cal Poly out in beautiful San Luis Obispo, where it's like paradise weather by the beach. Always beautiful. How you doing this morning, right? It's West Coast. It's 8:30. How are things with you?
Pretty good. It's a little sunny outside. Um, Super nice. I went outside and just read my book and kind of soaked up the sun a little bit and chilling out. Got a busy schedule today. Training, just losing weight for Michigan State. We got coming up on Saturday. We're flying out tomorrow. Super excited for that. But other than that, I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
I'm fantastic, man. I'm glad to get a chance here to catch up with you. And I don't think we've had you on the show before, and I like to start this kind of a lot of ways with the same people, right? Just kind of taking things back, and I want to get to college and the Michigan State Open and present day, but everybody's got a story of how they got into wrestling, and I'm just curious, like, how old were you? How did it get introduced to you? What are your earliest memories? Stuff like that.
I was 11 years old, and I think a lot of wrestlers, like their story starts out with their dad was a wrestler, or like their family is very serious into wrestling. My family never like we were actually a big football family, but I was way too small to be a football player back in the day. I was like the weight limit was like 140 pounds in Pop Warner for I think sixth, seventh grade, and I was like 75 pounds. So I was just getting clobbered by
Jeez.
guys. It's kind of miserable, and I remember I asked my parents if I'd go to wrestling practice, and actually Xander didn't go with me to that wrestling practice. He had like drama or something, and I had wrestled a couple kids who weren't really that great, but they'd been wrestling for like 2 or 3 years. And like my first day in, I went in and was like, I just wanted to hurt people, so I like went in and just tried to beat up people as much as I could. I'm not that kind of wrestler anymore, but that's who I was back in the day. And I remember I just my first tournament ever, I just like throw guys in head and arms. Like I just reach for a head and arm as best I could. I just pull them down to the mat and slam them. I took second my first tournament ever. But yeah, that was in Lake Elsinore. Started wrestling there. My second year, I took second at Kids State. And then after that, things were a little stagnant. And then we were trying to do private lessons. And we stumbled onto a guy named John Azevedo, who
Oh,
the year before was actually the head coach at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. He'd retired and was doing privates with us, and then he landed at a high school position. So we followed him. First year in high school, I don't even think they had me like ranked in the to go to state or anything. Um, and I ended up going to state. I was ranked like fourth in state, but I choked and lost like round before blood rounds. Um, but then as time went on, I just really bought into Coach Azevedo's training. You know, just really selfless, really athlete oriented. I think I've probably seen the guy get mad like two times in my life. Um, and I ended up my senior year in high school, attacking and pinning everyone at the state tournament. I got the Dave Schultz Award and went on to University of Wisconsin, wrestled there under Barry Davis for 2 years. I was his last match, took third at NCAA's. Some people probably remember that.
of course.
Um, and then coaching changed. Chris Bono was the coach. Wrestled there for 2 more years, then took an Olympic red shirt during COVID, which honestly was like COVID was a really good refresher, and that year I wrestled at the Olympic trials. Had some of the best performances I've ever had. And then came back here to California to wrestle at Cal Poly. And it was great because my brother ended up committing here. John Azevedo is a SoCal RTC coach here. My brother's coaching here in a kids club, so it's an incredible opportunity.
Cool, man. There's a lot to unpack there, and just from everything you said, I got a bunch of questions. We'll just start with back at the beginning, right? You're like, when I first started, I just wanted to like hurt kids, and that's not your style today. But why was that? Was it because you felt you were behind, like with technique or understanding the sport, so it's just like full on aggression was going to get you wins at a young age, or were you like, were you an angry or physical or very aggressive young kid?
Oh, I was an angry and physical aggressive kid. I don't know why. I wanted to hurt people as best I could. I remember I'd get like double arm barred back in the day, and I remember I would be like down there, and the kid would have both my arms, and I would like pull their arms like this and hope I could hurt them. And I had some kids I would hurt them from. I would be double arm barred, but I was just like from bottom getting double arm barred. I pull my arms in, and the kids like elbows would squeeze out, and they'd start crying. And I was like, I don't know. I was weird like that. I just wanted to hurt kids, and I didn't really get hurt a lot either. So
Yeah.
It was easy.
Okay. How would you describe because that's not really your style today. One, how would you describe your style today? And two, where did that come from, right? Where did you go from the physically aggressive and like want to hurt kids kind of mentality or style to like what you would describe as the way you wrestle today?
Well, I think after a while you realize it doesn't work, so I wanted to win more than I wanted to hurt people at the end of the day. So when I realized that it wasn't working, I was like, okay, I gotta change this. And I couldn't really figure it out for a while. I remember like a few years trying out leg attacks and they didn't work. And I'd like cry to my dad that leg attacks don't work. I'm never going to do them again. But in my mind, I knew I was like, hey, I got to start shooting to legs. It seems like the best guys are shooting to legs. And then when I went to Azevedo was when he would start breaking down video. Like I remember he would show me videos of Chance Marsteller because I was in 8th grade and Chance Marsteller I think was a sophomore or junior in high school, was a few-time state champion, almost pound for pound best at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
He showed me a bunch of videos of Chance Marsteller and his technique. And I really then kind of transitioned from I want to hurt people to I want to show my skill and my technique and what I've developed. So after that, I've just really started to develop into a style where I want to be versatile and be able to attack people from different positions and catch them off guard. That's really, I think, that's my goal is go into a match. And if a guy doesn't know what to expect at any point in the match, you're probably doing something right,
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Keep him unsuspecting, right? That transition, I don't know. Then I realized I needed to be more learning these things from John and change your approach. Was that a quick thing or did that take time?
That took time. I think in the beginning I was a little stubborn in my ways. I was like had a lot of match anxiety back in the day. So as much as I would listen to him, I was a good listener. I was coachable. Going out on the mat, I just kind of do the same things over and over. And then just with how he was as a coach, I really started to open up. It was really all about me. I tell a lot of guys, I think the best thing a coach can do, or where coaches can shine is when their athletes lose, because I think a lot of coaches get mad and then they want to change the coaching, like what they're doing as a coach, where really I think the best coaches I've had is when you lose, they look at everyone and say, we're going to do the exact same things, right? Like this program works. What I'm doing right now, what I'm coaching you guys to do wasn't a mistake. I don't care if you guys lost, right? We're going to keep doing this because this is what it takes to get better. And that's what Coach Azevedo did. And for me, it was like, okay, well, it doesn't matter if I lose or not. I'm doing the right things, right? I know regardless of when I go off the mat, I know what I got to do. So at that point, that just kind of was really relieving to me and relieved a lot of my anxiety for matches. He knew what we needed to do, so it was easy to follow.
That's a great. I like that anecdote you just gave. Like you lost, but the plan's still the same. It doesn't change, right? And I like that approach. What was Coach Azevedo's style? And by style, I mean like physically in the room, or when you're on the mat coaching. How would you describe the way he coached? Whether it was, I guess I'll just leave it at that.
So as a coach on the mat, I can tell you he was very, very, very calm, right? And it was probably easy because I was an eighth grader at the time. So it's like I know if I was coaching an eighth grader, I'm not going to get like super anxious, before the match or anything. Because I remember a few times my dad was my coach, and I love him to death, but he's just like full of anxiety, and he's a nervous wreck sometimes. And I remember I'd throw up sometimes. I was so nervous. My dad's screaming in the corner, all this stuff. And when Coach John got on the mat, it was kind of like you watch Cale Sanderson in the corner, just super quiet. He just tells you what you need to know. There's no extra. It's like, okay, like he would tell me if I couldn't score on a guy, he'd tell me something. Like I remember in the freak show one time, he's like, fake club inside arm this side, right? And I did it, and I couldn't touch the kid's legs, but I did. I got so deep, and I took the kid down, and from that point on, I was like, I'm listening to this dude, right? But so calm, it just really calmed me down in the match. I think a lot of athletes need that. It's not so big of a deal that the coach needs to panic in the corner, but in the room, he's he's pretty intense. Not like yelling at people, but he expects you to be drilling hard. He expects when we're going live, you're focused and you're trying to score points. He's yelled at guys a couple times in the room. I was never really the target for that, but I can't. I think he yelled at me once. I was rolling around at Iowa Nationals my sophomore year in high school. It's weird that I remember all this stuff,
It's great.
but I was beating this guy. I think it was Bryce West was his name from Iowa, and I was beating him pretty good. And then I chose bottom in the second, was rolling around, and I got stuck on my back once. And then I went from like winning by 8 points to only winning by 2 points. And he screamed at me from the corner. I'll never forget it. First time I ever heard him. He never swears. First time I ever heard him swear in my life. But
You don't have to repeat the exact words, but like, what did he say? And like, more so, what's your reaction? Right? I've never heard this guy like it seemingly lose his cool at all. Not that he lost his cool, but he got worked up. Right? What did that do to you on the mat? Did you kind of freeze up? Did you react real quick and adjust and like, all right, get in gear because this guy's up my ass?
immediately adjusted.
Yeah.
I've never adjusted so well in my life. Like I remember I was just like rolling around because I wanted easy points, and then at that point I was like, okay, these points aren't gonna come easy, right? I gotta focus up. But he was like, he looked at me and he looked angry. He's like, Evan, quit flopping around. And then he turned around and he was like, F. It was kind of funny. But and my parents do think to this day it's the funniest thing ever. But he was getting frustrated that I was rolling around and throwing the match away. But I ended up winning, so
Yeah.
he helped me.
I mean, I appreciate guys like John who are super calm, and that's how I know him, right? And I know him as to be a great guy. But I always want to hear, like, everybody flies off the handlebar at some point. Everybody gets worked up, and so I always like to hear, like, what does it take to get this guy animated? And so thank you.
It takes a ton for Azevedo, and that
Yeah.
was as a coach. That's another thing you can do well because I've had some coaches who are just constantly angry, and when they yell at you, you're just like, okay, it's just another day of coach whoever being coach whoever. But
Yeah.
when Coach John got angry, everyone listened because he's never angry.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So you know, going through what you just led off with, like your senior year, you tech pinned, I think you said, your way through the state tournament. And so it sounds like you made a big jump in there at some point. Was that due to Coach Azevedo, or what was this big jump in domination due to?
Due to Coach Azevedo, certainly I would say that was probably 70-80% of it. But I went to Fargo because I only took fourth at state my junior year. I broke my ankle on my birthday, January 10th at Doc B, my junior year, and was still kind of recovering. Didn't have like the best state tournament, but still I don't know if I could have won it. I wasn't really that great at the time. But then because I broke my ankle, I had to take a break. I went up a couple weight classes, and I went to Fargo in between my junior and senior year. So I went 138 my junior year, 152 my senior year, and I went 152 at Fargo my junior year, and I remember I was supposed to go 145, but the coaches came up and they were like, California has way too many guys at 145. We need someone to go up. And for some reason, I was just like, all right, I'll do it just randomly. My family's flying out and everything. So I don't know why I did it. If you're taking things seriously, you probably don't want to change up last second. But for some reason, I was like, I'll do it. I don't want to cut any weight.
Yeah.
And I wrestled, and I remember I wrestled Hayden Hidlay, who was the 1 seed. I think I was seeded like probably 15th or something. And I wrestled him in the quarterfinals, and I beat him 14-13. Probably like one of the best matches you can watch. Super like barn burner. He went up by 8 points. And then I stormed back and beat him by 1 point on a last second takedown. But I think it was just me taking those small little steps to tell myself that it doesn't really matter. We need to compete. It doesn't matter what weight I go. It just matters like how I compete. And I think that tournament was super big for me because I did take those steps. Before it was like I kind of had this scarcity mindset of like I have to do everything perfectly in order to succeed, right? Everything needs to be perfect. Everything needs to be organized and in a line. I need to know what's going on. I need to know everyone I'm wrestling, right? But then I bumped up a weight, and it was like, okay, well, I'm not cutting weight. I don't know who's in my weight class. This was like 2 days before the tournament, and I was like, you know what? All I need to do is compete. In that tournament, I went out there with that mindset, probably the first time I ever did, and I beat some of the top guys and took second at Fargo. I never placed. The year before, I went 1 and 2 at Fargo, and then I take second at Fargo, bumping up a weight, no less. Yeah. I remember having after weigh-ins, I couldn't even drink like 1 full pound of fluid. I was cutting so little weight.
That's great. Yeah, and would it be fair to say that maybe that tournament gave you a jump? But it sounds like it was a mental jump more than like a physical or like what's happening on the mat. It was like a more a belief or an understanding of like how to be successful. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it was just put everything aside and just compete. I think everyone goes on to the mat with so much in their head, and they think that it takes so much to be prepared for a match. When really at the end of the day, like, especially even at the D1 level, I see so many guys who they choke right before the match, and it's like, we're all doing the right things. We're all doing everything we need to do to go out there and be successful. I mean, not everyone can win, but at least be successful and have a good match. Everyone's doing the right things. So I think that was a big mental step for me in showing that, hey, all we got to do is go out there and wrestle our hardest.
I think something you said is really interesting, and I think I've been a victim of it, and probably a lot of people was right. Like we all have so much. Everybody's got so much going on in their head. Maybe some people choke right before the match. Like, what do you mean? You don't have to say anybody specific, but right there's every team, my team, your team, this team, that team. This I believe also happens.
Well, I mean, I think especially when you look at D1 guys, it's like we've been doing this for 13 years. We have the most experience in the world, at this sport, right? We're the best that we can possibly be. Coaches at the D1 level know what they're doing, right? So we got a good training schedule. You got terrific partners, right? You got guys coming from across the entire country to train with you. And then for some reason they go out there and they get tired in the first minute, or they don't shoot at all. They go out there and they're statues. But I think it's just there's a lot of self-doubt and there's a lot of things going on in their head, when really it's like you just need to focus on one thing, one or two things in your match, and you'll be good. I think the same thing goes for practice. Like, we got a kid at Cal Poly right now. It's probably one of the hardest workers I've ever seen in my life, right? The kid works out like 4 or 5 times a day, right? But he's not very effective with how he does it. I think he has so much anxiety even going into practice, and he wants to be so good right now that he focuses on like 10 different things at practice, and then come live, he doesn't get a takedown and he breaks, and then the rest of practice is shot. And it's like, how do you expect to focus on 10 different things in practice? I tell him every day, I'm like, dude, just pick one thing. Just pick 1 or 2 things to get better at today. That's all it takes. There's plenty of time.
That's great. Do you almost feel like do you embrace a leadership role today?
Yeah,
it sounds like it.
I mean, I'm a sixth year and I have a lot of experience. And there's also other leaders on the team, guys at Cal Poly who know the coaches, who know where we're at and the way things are going to go this year. So they're kind of a leader for me to follow. But I think when it comes to technique and things like that, um, I'm a returning 2-time All-American, 3-time if you count COVID.
Yep.
So I think if guys need help, I'm there for them. And I like my little brother's here, and it's his first year in college, so I like to kind of show him the way.
Sure. Transitioning into Wisconsin, right? And maybe it stems from this Fargo and then the dominance the senior year. Like third place as a freshman is amazing, right? It's really, really good. I don't know what percentage of it's a very minuscule place in the top 3 as a freshman, right? Hardly anybody does. Did you have that confidence coming in? And I think you redshirted for a year, so maybe maybe that had something to do with this still, right? A redshirt freshman. Was it expectation to be that successful?
No, not at all. I don't think many people had that expectation for me to do that well. I think I was ranked like 18th or 19th in the country my first tournament. Wasn't like super highly touted. I had a good summer, right? Like I wrestled and I beat David McFadden, who was a returning All-American. Hayden Hidlay, I think I beat twice that summer. So I had a great summer, but no one really expected me to do that well. And I think I really thrived on that. And I remember I wrestled, the Michigan State Open was actually my first college tournament. I wrestled Logan Massa, and I got majored like, I think he beat me by 10 points. Like, really put it on me. I got the first takedown, but he ended up beating me by 10 points in spite of that. But I'll never forget, I came off the mat, and this never really happened. I think wrestlers, their perfectionism gets the better of them. But I came off the mat, and I was like, I looked at all my buddies, and I was like, I'm going to beat that guy the next time I wrestle him. I know you guys don't think it's going to happen. I'm going to beat that guy. Like, I can beat him. And they were looking at me like I'm crazy. Right? Like I just got beat by 10 points, right? By the guy who took third at NCAA's last year, and I'm not even ranked, right? Finished up that tournament, had a great tournament, then went to Bakersfield, beat another couple ranked guys, wasn't too crazy. Then the week after that, so 2 weeks later after I lost to Logan Massa, I wrestled him at the Cliff Keen Las Vegas, and he was the 3 ranked guy in the country, and I beat him 8-4. I remember I wrote it down a couple times. I had like a social work class or something at Wisconsin, and I wrote it down. Evan Wick defeats Logan Massa like 10-4, a bunch of different situations, but just like me beating him, and that was pretty important. But I just went out there. I remember like pretty carefree, not worrying how the match went. I was just gonna wrestle my best. When you can beat the guy, it's like, well, I can beat him. All I got to do is wrestle the way I wrestle. So I did, but then I remember after that, things kind of went south. Like I went to over winter break. I went and I came back, and like I don't know, my pace wasn't right or something. I was getting tired in practice, and it was just all mental. I think lost to a couple guys I don't think I should have, and was really just beating myself up that whole year. I think I lost like 6 times after I beat Logan Massa. In between Big Ten and NCAAs. And then I went to NCAAs, and I remember I was like, you know what, forget it. Like, I'm just going to go out there. Same thing like when I wrestled Logan Massa. I was like, I'm just going to wrestle the way I wrestle, right? And if that doesn't, there's nothing more I can do than wrestle the way I can wrestle, right? That's just the way it's going to be, right? I'm not going to worry about anything else. I'm not going to worry about matchups, what he's going to do, all this stuff. I'm just going to wrestle the way I can wrestle. And I ended up taking third. So that was an awesome year. And I don't think at NCAA's I was ranked or seeded 11th. So I still wasn't even ranked to place there.
A lot of guys during their, the first year of full competition season in college, it's like, it's a grind, even if you're redshirting your first year, but there's not the pressures of competing and making weight every week. Could that have been part of the reason of this 6-match losing lull, whatever you want to call it, after you beat Logan and then you started to dip a little bit? Could that have been just like the season wearing on for you and never having experienced it?
I think the amount of competition, yeah, but I wasn't cutting weight at all. I think I weighed like 169. I certified for 157 that year. I was so
Okay.
small. I legitimately certified for 157. So I was small, not cutting too much weight. Just like, I don't know, I just got in my head before matches and locked up. Like I was always the guy in college or in high school and the beginning of my college to like I was gonna shoot as many shots as I needed to. Right? Like I'm just gonna attack and attack and attack. And somewhere along the line, I remember I wrestled Isaiah White. And I think I shot like one time in that match, and I was like really odd. And my coaches noticed that it was odd, but just like going through some mental stuff, and finally got through it at the end of the year.
Okay, let's fast forward. NCAA tournament, freshman year, third place match. You wrestled Marsteller, right?
Yep.
And you mentioned earlier in this interview, right, when I think maybe you were in 8th grade or something, and Azevedo showing you this tape of Chance Marsteller, who's this, right, this like pound for pound, one of the best guys in the country as like a 10th grader. Now you're competing against him in the third place match on Saturday morning. What was that experience like before, during, and after? Because you didn't know you were wrestling till because you had the Conti semis, right? And that Saturday is probably kind of goes fast. But like, what do you remember about that day and being like, I've had a good run. I'm here, find myself in the third place match against Chance Marsteller. And you've kind of explained to us a lot of the ways your head has evolved and grown, right? Your mind throughout the years. Where are you at walking into this match? What's your opinion or viewpoint of Chance Marsteller, and how did you feel going into that match?
Going into the match, I felt pretty good. I mean, you make it to the third, fourth place match at NCAA's as a freshman, and there's not really that much pressure at all to compete. So I remember going to the match thinking, whatever happens, happens. Which was probably a good way to think. I don't think you need to absolutely believe you're going to win in order to compete well. I've had a lot of matches where I went into it. Chance Marceller's match, for example, where I was like, I could probably lose this one. I could probably lose this match, but I'm going to go out there and give it my all. And it was probably good that you only have like 45 minutes in between that Conti semis match and then the third, fourth place match. So I didn't have much time to think about it. And two, I remember after I wrestled Alex Marinelli in the consolation semifinal, and my forearms were like completely shot. Just grabbing wrists and like locking my hands a lot. I locked up a couple cradles in that match, and I remember my forearms. I couldn't even like open my hands. My forearms were cramping so much. Um, my trainer basically just for like 30 minutes had to like roll out my forearms. And it was probably good just to get my mind off that. I didn't even know until like probably 15, 20 minutes before the match who I had. I knew I had Marsteller. But it was definitely on my mind that, I had been watching Chance Marsteller video with my high school coach for like 3 years before. And I was kind of nervous about that, to be honest. But once I went out on the mat and I was like, last match of the day, last match of the season, let's just make it happen. And I wrestled pretty well. I got to my leg attacks. He was actually up 4-1 going into the second. I picked top, and then I ended up pinning him in like 20 seconds in the second period when I picked top. He tripoded. I cradled him, rolled him through, and pinned him.
When you picked top, were you thinking cradle, or were you just thinking top? Turns, whatever, pins.
I looked over at Barry Davis, and I remember Barry liked me to pick top a lot. Like there were sometimes he made me pick top. I wasn't necessarily comfortable with it, but I remember I looked over and he was like, "All right, we're gonna pick top." And when Barry told me to pick top, or like Barry knew I was good at a cradle, so I was like, "All right, I'm going for a cradle." And I don't know why Marsteller tripoded there. I mean, you got to know. I mean, throughout the whole tournament, I pretty much cradled everybody except I think maybe Logan Massa in the round before the quarters. I pretty much cradled everybody, so he had to have known that it was coming. But he tripoded. I remember he reached back for my head, and I just locked up the cradle and suicided it and cradled him. But I knew for sure, um, especially at the time, I couldn't really turn high level guys without the cradle. So I was going for the cradle.
Yeah, I remember that clear as day. I was surprised. I was shocked. Right, I was like, "Holy
Yeah.
cow!" I think a lot of people were right. So and congratulations. That was a fantastic finish. Right, I'm sure to the end of the freshman year. You come out, you All American again as a sophomore, and I think the next year, if I'm remembering this correctly, was the COVID year.
Yep.
Right, and then you make the decision to leave. And I don't know if you initially knew you were going to go to Cal Poly or not. I think there was a couple schools, right? But what was the decision to leave, and your reasoning behind that?
Um, I just really felt like I needed a change of scenery. When you're at the same place for 5 years, um, I don't know. It's kind of tough to do that day in and day out, And I think the reason that I did it was because um, I went back over COVID to California, and I was living there, and I was training with my high school coach, right? And just from having something like a different experience again, like going from Wisconsin and having that experience, and then coming back to California and getting a completely different coaching change, I'd gotten exponentially better, right? And I was like, okay, I need something different this year. It was a little stagnant at Wisconsin for me, at least. So I just knew that in order for me to get better, to get the best I can this next year, I need to go somewhere else. I need to seek a new training situation. And it was tough. I mean, I'd been at Wisconsin for 5 years. I missed the place in the summer, at least, not in the winter. But I don't know how Ben wants to live there. I think the rest of his life. I don't know how he's going to do that, man. That's living in that cold is too much for me.
Yeah, same
Um,
here. Prefer the warm weather.
no, I don't want to do that. But
Uh,
it was just. I also knew I wanted to be somewhere that I was like truly happy. The times that I've competed my best were when I was like my happiest. When I beat Logan Massa my freshman year, I was like just like that was probably one of the best times of my life. The team was super awesome. I love those guys. I miss those guys. So I knew that I need to go somewhere where I'm going to be happy. So I picked either between Cal Poly, where I figured, my brothers, my high school coach, I got some friends on the team, like that could be a really good training situation. The coaches are doing some great things. Bernie Truex was the first All-American here in like 10 years. Took fourth place right around my weight. So the coaches knew what they were doing, and I knew that. And then I could also go somewhere like Penn State, right, where they're always bragging about having fun and being happy and how important that is. And I know for sure I could have been happy at Penn State. So it was a tough decision, man. Um, Picking between those two schools. But ultimately, I wanted to be close to home. I wanted to be in good weather. I know I'm probably gonna come back out here after college anyway. So I was like, why go all the way to Penn State and come all the way back to California a year later when I know I'm going to end up here anyway?
Yep.
So
Great. And I think I mentioned you briefly. Like John Cerritos was a teammate of mine, right? He's your head coach at Cal Poly. He was tough as nails. Does he wrestle? Do you get in scrap with you guys at all?
he's he's going to be doing it pretty soon. He had like arthritis in his knee or something. He had like bone spurs, so they went in there and like shaved it all down. So he's kind of been like, I don't know. He's been hyping himself up. He thinks I can't finish a single leg on him. So I gotta show him what real single leg finishes look like.
I'll tell you this. He doesn't shoot a lot, but when he does, watch out. He was recruited as a 133 pounder, so you know.
Oh my
And he
God,
became a
133.
I think he was recruited as a 33. Had this dyed blonde hair. Yeah, little guy, but then it was like, 41. Then it was 49. Then it was like, okay, just like I think it was 65 in the end. And I think he transferred to Chattanooga, but yeah,
Yep.
yeah, he was a little guy.
All-American.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know, like we talked about this year, but the freestyle success you had, right? You were third at the mini tournament, at the Olympic trials. I don't know, and like you were seeing that success as a freshman at the NCAA level, Now, you're still in college and you're starting to see success at the senior level. Similar question as before. Like, was that a surprise at all? Did you expect yourself to do that, to do better? Because the guys that finished ahead of you are all hammers.
Yeah. I don't think it was too surprising. I've always known that if I can go out there and wrestle my match, I'm gonna do good. The times where I really underperform is when I'm, like I've said before, I get in my own head and I just limit myself. I think when people talk about the mental battle being the biggest battle that athletes have to overcome, like, it's totally true. I think there's so many. When I think of college wrestling, or even like Olympic level wrestling, like, everyone's right there. Like I've said, we've been doing this for 15 years. Everyone knows the technique. I always say, like, college wrestlers, they know a million things, but they only do like one or two in a match.
Yeah.
But when you watch the best guys, it's the guys who go out there and open up and they do different things. And they, like I said, they can keep their opponent off guard. So I just knew that if I go out there and truly let myself wrestle, I'm gonna do pretty good. Whether or not I win or not, that's not really the goal. The goal is to get better and to compete the best I can. So I think most tournaments I've won into, or the majority of the tournaments that I've won into, it's not surprising. I know that I work super hard. I think about this sport a lot. I think about technique all the time. I'm constantly developing and getting better. If I go out there and let myself wrestle, I'm going to do well. I'm not going to surprise myself.
I think it would be. I don't think you would disagree, right? It'd be fair to say that you're the second tier of guys at 74. You got Dake and Burroughs, like two of the all-time greatest, at least currently, at the top of that division in an Olympic year. Do you see yourself at some point being in the upper echelon, vying for team spots, vying for world and Olympic spots, and for medals?
Oh, absolutely. I think I have like a really good training situation here right now with Truax. The coaches are constantly flying. We had Alex Derringer come in. We had Chance Marsteller come in and train with us. Adam Kemp is an incredible training partner. Coach Chewy, Chris Januma is a super awesome training partner. And then I got my high school coach, John Azevedo, here. And I've just, like, he's someone who's surprised me with how much better he can get me, right? Like, every day he comes up to me after practice with something that's like, if I have a bad day and I'm thinking in my head, what do I got to do? What's the next thing I got to do? Like, he just knows. Like, he comes up and he's like, you just got to be lower. And like yesterday, it was like, you just got to be lower in your stance. Like, you're just a little high reaching. And if you just stay lower in your stance, you can do a lot better. And it was like, wow, man, like, if I have this guy in my corner, if I have this guy around me, there's no limit to what I can do, and being the way I am here, like, happy, being in a good team environment, having coaches who truly care about me, I know that that's going to be a recipe for good mental success as well. Like, you can be in a place, I could have went to Penn State and had all the best opportunities, had all the best benefits, good training partners, whatever they have, free snacks, whatever, they got good guys coming in, mental people coming in. But if I'm not happy, all that means literally nothing. And I've been in that situation before. Wisconsin was a pretty good training situation, but I just felt like I wasn't truly happy there, at least with my wrestling. And I wasn't competing at the highest level that I could have because of that. I just needed to be around, I feel like, the right people, or to be in the right place.
Yeah.
So I feel like with where I'm at now, my mental success and my technical success are going to get substantially better.
It's interesting you made that point from that Azevedo was like, just slow your stance a little bit. Like, small things, right? Like you're mentioning earlier, this teammate of yours who is very dedicated and works super hard, but he's focusing on 10 things every practice instead of like one little thing, lower your stance. And it's not even like a move, right? It's like, I guess you would call it positioning. It's positioning. Yep. That's all it is. So I really dig that. And we're winding down to the end here. We've got a couple segments. We like to play with our guests, and the first one is with Kyle Klingman over here, who's been sitting by so patiently in front of Bob Dylan. But you actually have you look like you're outlined of his face. You set it up today like you are Bob Dylan. Anyways, go ahead. You have the floor.
I'm honored. It's our segment called Sweat It Out, 5 questions for Evan Wick. Are you ready to play?
I hope so.
Okay. We'll see what happens here. Number 1, actor Keanu Reeves plays a former hitman in what movie franchise? Yep, you got it. Number 2, I asked you this question a couple years ago when it was track wrestling in our 7 minutes feature. So I'm going to see if you have the same answer. Who knows more about wrestling, your mom or your dad?
I can't even remember what I said back then. Ooh. See, this one's tough. My parents are watching. I would have to say my dad probably knows a little bit more about wrestling. My mom's probably more. She likes to focus more on the mental side, I guess. But my dad can tell you literally every single match I have ever had. Like, and I'm not joking. Every single match I've ever had. Me and all my brothers.
What would your mom say to that? To the answer to this question was, would she agree?
I think she would agree, but like she took us to a lot of practices. Like she took us to the majority of practices, I think, when we were kids. So she might get a little offended by that. But I think my dad like watches all these shows. My dad watches matches all the time. So I'd have to give it to my dad.
All right.
That's what you said last time, so you're consistent here. So yeah, I'm giving you that to you. All right, number 3, you have to tell me either who the character was or who the actor was who said this. Rule number 76, no excuses, play like a champion.
That's Wedding Crashers, Vince Vaughn.
Yep.
What was the scenario on that? Oh, okay, I don't remember. But
Say it again,
got
Kyle. No excuses.
Rule number 76, no excuses, play like a champion.
Yeah, I don't know. Sometime they were crashing a wedding, or maybe when they went to
Yeah,
the
they
house
go back and
afterwards. Was it in the beginning?
those are all completely made up rules. Even in like they're just spitballing them, right?
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
They were. That's the beauty of it. Number 4, who were the first twins to win CIF state titles in the same year?
Well, you could either say Evan Wick and Xander Wick or Jeremy Thomas and Justin Thomas. We both won the same year.
I'm going
And
with
we
you
were
guys.
consecutive weights, so it went 45s was Xander Wick, 52 was Evan Wick, 60s was Justin Thomas, 70s was Jeremy Thomas.
So I guess Wicks would be the answer.
Yeah, I like it.
Wicks. Yeah.
And then number 5, what 3-time NCAA champion defeated 3 different eventual world silver medalists in the NCAA championship finals?
He was a 3-time NCAA champion?
The 3-time NCAA champ, every one of his matches was against a different eventual world silver medalist.
I think I know.
What year? Can I ask?
Yep, 82, 83, and 85 were the years he won NCAA titles.
Gosh,
And you know him.
I know him.
Yes, you know
Oh.
him.
Barry Davis?
Yep.
Let's get a couple hints on that one.
I didn't know he did that. He beat consecutive world medalists each time.
He beat 3. They hadn't won it yet, but eventually those 3 wrestlers he beat in the finals won world silver medals.
Well, tell us who they are.
Okay.
They are Joe McFarlane, they are Kevin Darkus, and they're Gary Bohey, who wrestle for Canada.
Was that Barry's first year being an NCAA champion, or which year was that him?
That was each.
Those
Those
year.
were the 3 guys he beat in the finals over 3 different years.
Okay. I thought it was in one year he beat a bunch of different guys.
No.
Okay.
You still got it.
Barry was an impressive wrestler, man. People forget how good he was.
Yeah. Where do you think Barry Davis lands? Where do you think Barry Davis lands on the top 100? Shot in the dark.
Me?
Yeah. Me and Kyle know.
Well, so we talking. I'm actually really interested in this list. Is it folk style?
It's folk style, freestyle, Greco, women's. It's the top 100 American wrestlers of all time. Period. And like, there's no rubric on how to grade it, right? What do NCAA titles mean versus world and Olympic medals versus how many of either versus, a transcendent quality to it, right? It's kind of like the full scope of someone's career. There's, everybody's individual list would be different. My list is different than Kyle's, but we all came together and agreed on this list to present, right?
I would say Barry Davis probably falls around 60 in the top 100 of all time. Is that fair?
I mean, you have to find out. That would be episode 4, so that'd be 4 weeks from now. 3 weeks from now, because episode 1 comes out tomorrow, episode 2 a week later, and so on. So you'll know by that episode whether or not he's on the list. I'll give you that. I can't tell you where.
He's a damn good wrestler. I'd say around 60. But my bets for number 1 are going to be probably Bubazar Satiev.
American wrestlers.
Oh, it's only American?
Only Americans.
Oh, Barry's probably a little higher then. But my number 1 would probably be Kale, Smith, or Burroughs. I mean, that's pretty general, but
I mean, it's very specific, but those are not bad guesses.
yeah.
Okay,
For sure.
we got time for one more game. You got time here? Won't take long, Evan. Okay, this is called wins and whoopings. So, looking back over the span of your entire career, can you point to one win that's sticks out to you for any reason, really memorable? It can be an awesome win, or your best win, or a comeback, or beating somebody who used to beat you all the time, or headlocking some kid in 3rd grade, or I think you started wrestling in 4th or 5th, whatever, right? It can be any match from your entire career that sticks out, NCAAs, trials, whatever. And then like one whooping that you took that was like, you remember it. It stands out in your memory, and you walked off the mat and you shook your head and you didn't know what happened. You can do either one first.
I would say the best win I ever had, I got 2. Either when I beat Logan Massa the first time ever, that was like what really established me and what I was really able to tell myself, man, I could All-American, I could be an NCAA champion. That was my first year in college. And then another win was Hayden Hidlay between my junior and senior year at Fargo. Was a really good match. I was down 8 points, and I was not ranked in the country, and he was number 1 in the country, and I beat him. That was pretty good. Some pretty serious whoopings I used to take were in the beginning by the Thomas brothers. They both used to kick the living crap out of me, and I think every kid when they go in, at least I thought, was like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to be like a prodigy. Like, I'm going to be the best kid that wrestling has ever seen. And then when like Justin Thomas, Jeremy Thomas, and then there was this kid named Joseph Dominguez, they just beat the living crap out of me. So that was like that was when I came back down to reality. It was like, okay, I'm going to have to work pretty hard for this. But those beatings were pretty bad. Didn't get beat up too much in high school. A pretty embarrassing loss was my loss against Vincenzo Joseph in the duel. My junior year, I think it was. I invited my girlfriend, who was not my girlfriend at the time. I just met her, and I was like, hey, if you want to come to a wrestling match, I'm going to be wrestling the number 1 ranked guy in the country. I was like super confident about this. It's like, I'm going to be wrestling the number 1 ranked guy in the country. And she didn't really know me at the time, but she came and she brought every friend she ever had, and I got beat up by Vincenzo Joseph. But I guess it was a good test. She still wanted to hang out after that, and we've been dating for a year and a half now.
Or maybe you had some sympathy points.
Probably, yeah. That was probably a good strategy.
Well, it worked out.
It's a win-win.
What's that?
It was a win-win. If I win, I look like Superman. If I lose, then I get some sympathy points.
Yeah. Well, good for you, and I'm glad to hear it. Sounds like things are working out just fine for you guys. So, man, it's been fun chatting with you for this show and kind of hearing your story more. I really enjoyed this conversation. We are going to give you the final word. Anything you want to say about anything?
Me and all my buddies, my teammates, are going to be wrestling at Michigan State this upcoming weekend. It's going to be fun. I can't wait. I think Cal Poly's got some super awesome, incredible things going on here. I think we're doing stuff differently than any other college wrestling program is doing. I can't wait.
Awesome, man. Well, Evan, best luck to you at Michigan State and the rest of your career, college and otherwise. Thanks so much for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Can't wait for the top 100 list.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it. You have a good one.
You too.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, so that's it for Evan Wick. Yeah, awesome guy to talk with. Really enjoyed this conversation, Kyle.
Really did too. And man, if you don't do it, I got to put a plug in that your birthday's tomorrow.
I will turn 35 tomorrow. That is true.
For the drop of the top 100, you get to celebrate your birth. So I will celebrate it every single day of my life. You just celebrate it once a year.
Top 100 comes out tomorrow. For Kyle Klingman, I'm Mark Bader. Thanks so much. We'll see you guys.